Who would have thought that the Houston Texans, out of all teams in the AFC South, would win the damn division? And even me, I was surprised at how good this damn team was, and I picked them to win 7 games. Like, CJ Stroud had the greatest rookie season in NFL history, bro. This dude was a phenomenal. He was, bro. Like, this dude was incredible this season. He was better than Trevor Lawrence. He was better than Jalen Hurts. He was a top 5 quarterback this year. Just strictly based on what CJ Stroud has done in the regular season, there's only 4 other quarterbacks that I would take over him. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. After that, I would go with CJ Stroud. And the fact that DeMeco Ryans was hired by this organization and was able to turn this thing around in only the span of a year is not just a testament to how great of a head coach he is, but how great of a staff he has. Like, Houston fans were down in the dumps, bro. Like, you were in the gutter for the last couple of years. Like, you remember when Bill O'Brien just completely tore apart a damn near Super Bowl caliber team, gets rid of DeAndre Hopkins, makes the bad trade and gets a washed up running back, trades away one of your best offensive tackles, and makes awful decisions in the draft? Like, there was a point where things looked really dark for Houston. And then you hire David Culley to be your head coach. You got Lovie Smith as your head coach after him. Like, it was a tough time being a Texans fan at one point. And then all of a sudden, you bring in DeMeco Ryans, and he just injects immediate change into this organization. Not just with the performance on the field, but in the locker room. You look at how these players interact with each other. You never saw this with Lovie Smith. You never saw this with David Culley, your head coach before Lovie Smith. Like, the Houston Texans this season have been the best story in the NFL. This was a team that people thought was possibly going to be picking in the top 5, top 10 again. People thought that this team at most would win like 5, 6 games. That just shows you what happens when you get the right head coach and you get the right quarterback. There's this narrative going around that defensive coaches can't win in the NFL no more. Like, that's bullshit. You can win with any head coach, rather if you were a former special teams coordinator or a defensive coordinator. It doesn't matter, bro. You can win with the head coach that isn't offensive minded, as long as they can hire the right guys on the coaching staff and they can get the quarterback situation right. And that's what Houston did when they drafted CJ Stroud. And on top of that, they drafted a wide receiver that CJ Stroud really wanted, Tank Dell. Well, you want to find a way to make sure your quarterback's successful, ask them who you should draft, and you go ahead and get it done. Like, Tank Dell was my 2nd overall wide receiver in the draft last year behind Zay Flowers. He was a stud this year, and it's unfortunate that we might not see him play in the postseason. Maybe if they make it to the AFC Championship, they can. But, like, you were counted out. You were rolling off. Nobody gave you a shot. Like, people thought that you were going to be one of the worst teams in the league again this year. And CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans, bro, like, they turned lemons into lemonade. Like, the offensive line has been awful this season. Doesn't matter. Like, you're a very young team. Like, the majority of your best players are young, and they're not even in their prime yet. And you've dominated the draft. Like, the Texans are going to be a contender in the next couple of years. I don't know if you're going to be a legitimate contender next year. You possibly could if CJ Stroud takes an even bigger step next season and he becomes like a top 3 quarterback. You definitely can be in that conversation, but there's a few things that you got to clean up, a few things you got to improve. But this is a great starting point for the Houston Texans as an organization. Like, CJ Stroud was crying after they beat the Indianapolis Colts, man. Like, I damn near shed a tear too. Like, You trade away DeAndre Hopkins. You trade away Deshaun Watson as a Texans fan, bro. It's like watching what happened to your squad at one point get disassembled by Bill O'Brien had to be like getting your soul ripped out of your body. There was no reason to turn on the Texans game prior to DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud arriving. Like, you were probably thinking that you would be an 8-9 win team, but I don't think anybody, including yourself, expected this. Like, DeMeco Ryans, without a doubt, is coach of the year, in my opinion. You can give it to Kevin Stefanski all you want to, but the Browns were expected to make it to the postseason. All right, now what he's doing with Joe Flacco is incredible. It's remarkable in his own right. But nobody expected Houston to win the AFC South. Everybody just automatically felt like this division was on lock. And it was the Jacksonville Jaguars to lose. It's crazy how fast you can turn a franchise around in the span of one offseason when you get the right quarterback and you get the right head coach. Oh, we're just glad that we didn't take Bryce Young. Like, it didn't matter if you took Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. Like, you still would have been great because you got a great staff. You got a great front office now. Like, any of the quarterbacks would have been fine in Houston because of the coaching staff. It's all about where you go. CJ Stroud went to an organization with the head coach and general manager that listened to him, that took him in, built the scheme around him. And CJ Stroud, to his credit, like, this was also somebody who was counted out. Somebody who people didn't really have extremely high expectations for. Like, nobody really was high on CJ Stroud until after he balled out against Georgia. After that game, that's when people started to come around on CJ Stroud. But even then, like, you had people comparing him to Jared Goff. I felt like him getting compared to Jared Goff was extremely disrespectful. Like, this dude ain't no Jared Goff. This dude is not Jared Goff at all, bro. He's way better than Jared Goff. I feel like that was really disrespectful. Like, the Texans this year, man, like, they proved everybody wrong this year. Like, it may have been only like 1% of the population that thought that Houston would have been able to pull this feat off. Like, this defense has so many great young players on it. We all know about Will Anderson, but what about Jalen Petrie? Jalen Petrie is a top 5 safety in the NFL. Like, Derek Stingley. I forgot about this dude. Like, Lovie Smith didn't know how to use him at all. He goes to DeMeco Ryans, and all of a sudden, despite missing a good amount of games, this dude is racking up the interceptions. The Houston Texans, with the young players that they have right now and their current infrastructure, I'm really confident that they're about to win the Super Bowl in the next 3 to 5 years. And that may be, like, high praise. That may be a bold statement. But with how well they draft and how good they are at player development and putting their players in positions to thrive, this is going to be a Super Bowl contender in the next couple of years. May not be next season, but it's definitely going to be in the next couple of years. It's just around the corner. They made it to the postseason, and nobody even thought that it would have been possible. Like, if you would have told somebody back in August that the Texans were going to win the AFC South over the Jaguars, they would have asked you if you were crazy or if you were drunk. And could you have blamed them? I mean, honestly, like, as a Steeler fan, when I saw CJ Stroud just completely obliterate Mike Tomlin's defense, I knew this dude was him. I knew it. Like, after that game, as a Steeler fan, I was looking at CJ Stroud and I was like, this dude's a top 5 quarterback. There was a point during the season, he was playing at an MVP level. He was legitimately in the MVP discussion. There will never be a rookie quarterback to have the kind of season that CJ Stroud has had. Like, maybe Caleb Williams, but what CJ Stroud did this season, I truthfully believe is a phenomenal. Because this dude is just built different. The teammates love him. They rally behind him in the locker room. The coaches, like, they listen to him. Like, when he offers them suggestions, like, they take it into account. This is just an overall well-run organization. It is. And it's crazy because a couple of years ago, you went from Bill O'Brien just completely tearing apart your team, trading away DeAndre Hopkins. Eventually he gets fired. You trade away Deshaun Watson, and there's no hope. There's no reason to be optimistic about the future. And then all of a sudden, your 2 bad head coaches get fired, and then you bring in DeMeco Ryans. You get CJ Stroud, who falls in your lap. You get some star rookies, Will Anderson, Tank Dell, and you got some good second-year players who step up. Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, and all of a sudden, you take the division away from Jacksonville, who people thought was a lock to win it. You see, like, the difference between the Texans and the Jaguars is that the Texans were way more consistent this year. You got way more consistent quarterback play out of CJ Stroud. You got way more consistent coaching out of DeMeco Ryans. There wasn't too many games I watched this season when I was like, bro, DeMeco, what the hell are you doing with that clock management? What the hell are you doing with this end game decision making? Like, Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, despite only being a play caller for a year, like, there are tons of teams that are probably going to have him on their board when it comes to potential head coaches. He may not get a head coaching job, but I definitely expect him to get a couple of interviews. And if he does next season what he did this season and CJ Stroud is even better, he's going to be a head coach in 2 years. Like, he's not going to be around for too long. Like, DeMeco Ryans completely nailed all the hires on his coaching staff. All of them. From the offensive coordinator to the people who do, like, the strength and conditioning. Like, this is a completely stud coaching staff that DeMeco Ryans has, led by a stud head coach and himself. Like, I don't think you can give Coach of the Year to anybody else but DeMeco Ryans. Like, this dude brought this franchise out of the gutter. Like, they were in the shallow realm at one point. It was tough if you were a Texans fan, bro. Like, you never thought that you were ever going to be able to see the day that the Houston Texans would be hosting a home playoff game. And instead, like, in only the span of 1 year, one off season, you go from being one of the worst teams in the NFL, being a laughingstock, to hosting a playoff game, calling yourself AFC South champions. Like, hats off to the DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud, and everybody else from that Texans team and inside that organization, because you proved everybody wrong. Like, everybody. Everybody.